Tonight, we're going to talk about the betting odds that the 49ers have to win a Super Bowl, the things they need to do to win said Super Bowl, and most importantly, we're going to finally end the argument, the infighting with 49er fans about Brock Purdy. I'm going to walk you through just how to do that. We're going to do that next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday, so I got my guy, So Real, Sunil in the building. What's up, Sunil?
Living the dream, my man. I saw your tweet. It was rather dramatic. And I was like, man, this guy's capping. Then I come to find out it was really your goodbye, and I don't know if I don't know how I feel about it, but man, if it is goodbye forever on Twitter, I did enjoy your back and forth with the Twitter with the fan base and whatnot, and I wish you the best, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We were talking a little bit about it, and I'll explain it for a minute. Basically, for me, Twitter was a way to get out there and get known and have engagement with people. But the more that you start to navigate through social media, the more you figure out that people want to be met where they want to be met. So most people that are on Twitter want to stay on Twitter. They don't want to come to YouTube. And YouTube for me is where it's at, because this is the platform that I own. I can engage with people as much as I want. And so I'm like, instead of throwing out tweets of random thoughts, I can use my community tab to the people that support me, and we can have real conversation right here. I can make my very own Twitter sphere right here on YouTube. And it's time to double down on YouTube this season, this upcoming season. I got an all-star cast of people that I'll be working with. And it's just time to put all my efforts into that, all my extra efforts. Obviously, I've got my family and work and all those things. So every extra minute, I want to pour into the content here on YouTube. And so that was just step one. We're getting ready. We're getting ready to gear up this season, Sunil.
Hey, man, I'm glad I'm glad I could be here, part of the journey, my friend.
Well, you're going to stay a part of the journey this upcoming season, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's say what's up to the chat real quick. We got Mike in the building. We got, it's just the Hate Purdy show. Get ready for it, Yafi. We got Mike Crocker. What's up, Mike? We got Bob. We got Ryan. He's saying he's the sixth person in here. Good luck to you, Ryan. Ryan, I watched part of your show. Sorry, I didn't text you back, but I did watch part of your show. I didn't end up watching the whole thing because I ended up having to be on hold for 3 hours. I'll talk to you after the show about what happened there on a phone call. Ed V. Lobs is now a regular on YouTube. This is crazy. See, I don't even need to be on Twitter. I already got Lobs over here on the YouTube channel. It's good enough for me. What's up, this guy? All right, let's get this thing jumping. So first thing that caught my eye today was the betting odds for the Super Bowl. And not just the betting odds, but what people are putting their money on. So right now, most of the money is coming in on the Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl. 15.7% of all money bet is going towards the Buffalo Bills. The 49ers ranked 5th on this list. It's 7.3% of the money. So I'm going to go through it real quick. 15.7% is on the Bills. 9.3% is on the Eagles. 8.9%, that's where I'm putting my money, if it's me, is on the Bengals. 7.5% is on the Lions, believe it or not. Although their odds are 20-1, so you're getting a good payout there. And then the 49ers, it's 7.3%. You think that's fair? If you were laying money, if I gave you $1,000 right now and I said you got to choose a Super Bowl winner with a decent payout, are you betting on the Niners or are you betting on another team?
The Chiefs. I'm betting on the Chiefs.
They're not even on the list.
I know. That's what was crazy to me. The Chiefs got to be the favorite, right? So, like, if I'm putting money, I'm putting money on the Chiefs, right? You got Patrick Mahomes. You got Andy Reid. You got Kelsey. You're pretty much bringing back the whole team. Plus, you got, some upgrades in rookies and young guys that are about to step up. I mean, that's where my money is. As far as from the NFC, though, I think the 49ers are in the Super Bowl. So I would say my team in the East, and I think I've already mentioned it, my team in the AFC is going to be the Chiefs. Got 49ers out of the NFC. I personally think that by the end of the season, the 49ers are going to be able to do enough to be champs. But right now, how confident I am on that. If gun to my head and it's $1,000, it's got to be on the Chiefs.
Okay, so let's take the Chiefs out of it, and we'll take the 5 teams that were on this list. So the Bills, the Eagles, the Bengals, the Lions, and the 49ers. Who are you
49ers.
Betting? 49ers?
Yeah. I think that the Bills are going to be one of the bigger disappointments of the year. They already got drama going on over there. Yeah, they're about to have some issues with the stadium. I just read I just saw a headline that said in their new stadium or whatever, they have 63,000 season ticket holders, and their stadium only holds 60,000 people. So they got things that they got to figure out over there. I'm thinking that coach is on the hot seat, so I think there's a lot going on over there that doesn't bode well for their Super Bowl aspirations.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked at 15.7%, and their odds are 8-1. So it's not like you're even getting better odds than you would on the 49ers or Bengals. Now the Eagles are 7-1, so you're getting better odds there. Buffalo was my team last year. They were my pick last year. And this bodes well for 49er fans because my pick this year is the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. So I'm wrong. Like I was wrong last year. So this is good. You should be happy that I'm not picking the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. I am picking the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl, though. If I were actually betting, I probably would lay my money on the 49ers as well. Not necessarily because I think that they're going to win, but if I'm just looking at the easier path, what's easier, AFC or NFC? I think the NFC has an easier path than the AFC. The Bengals, I think, are going to win it, but they're going to have to get through a little bit of a gauntlet just to get there. And so just based off of those odds, plus the 49ers being 10-1, meaning I get a better payout versus the Bengals 9-1, I'd probably lay my money on the 49ers as well. I think it's a very, very good bet. The Lions being above the Niners was a bit surprising. I know that you're getting 20-1 odds, but that just there's no way the Lions are going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, is Gibbs supposed to be that much of an upgrade? I don't know. We'll see. I think that the Lions are definitely on the upswing, but I don't think this is the year that they're going to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Lob says he would rather play the Bengals than no Mahomes or Allen. I'm surprised, Lobs. I figured you would be a Joe Burrow kind of guy. So I'm surprised that you're an Allen guy over Burrow, it sounds like. That's something we agree on. There you go. There's a check mark right there. We agree on that if that's the case. I assume that you are. So Twisted Clown says, what I missed, Jesse hating on Trey? Just kidding. I'm not hating on Trey. There's no way possible. Okay, I'm curious. Like, not you have to win, but best odds, I understand the Lions. I want to know from the chat, who would you put your money on? You got the 49ers at 10-1 odds. You got the Lions at 20-1 odds. You got the Bengals at 9-1. You've got the Eagles at 7-1 and Bills at 8-1. Who would you put your money on, and why would you put your money on them? I'm curious to see what comes in from the chat on that. As we're doing that, I wanted to talk about this because I've really been thinking about the mentality of the 49ers coming off that NFC Championship game, and it really hit me. I don't know why I did this to myself, Sunil, why I went back and watched the NFC Championship game. It was very hard to watch, first of all. I had not watched a single snap since the game ended. Everything that I talk about was completely off memory. And there were a couple things that happened in that game that I kind of forgot the sequence. And maybe that's for the better. When trauma happens, a lot of times you block it out.
Oh, boy.
That was with the 49er game, the NFC Championship. I blocked out some of that trauma, I think, Sunil. But I am starting to think that the 49ers potentially look at that game, just based off the way that they speak, are looking at that game like it meant nothing. And if we had our quarterback, we would be good to go. And that's really all it came down to. But when I watched that game back, there was a lot of things that stood out to me outside of the quarterback position potentially that could have been done better by the 49ers. Not necessarily saying they would have won. That's not what I'm trying to say. But they can get better in certain areas, and there's things that they can do better. So my question for you is, do you believe that the 49ers are looking at the NFC Championship game the way that they're portraying to everybody? And if they are, is that dangerous?
So I know this is about to be a shot at my guy Kyle Shanahan, because before you retired from Twitter, I know there was a lot. I know there was a lot of sub tweets and all that kind of stuff. Jeez. So I'm gearing for it. But to answer your direct question, one, I think that Debo thinks it the way that he's saying, but I don't think Kyle Shanahan is in that game thinking just if we had Purdy there, all of a sudden we win that game. I think that unless you don't know football and you don't know anything about X's and O's, and I don't claim to be an expert on the X's and O's in football, but that defensive line was eating our offensive line up throughout the whole game. That was regardless of who the quarterback was. Now, I do think that it's underestimated how well the 49ers offense was doing against the Eagles when they did have Purdy in there, and the fact that they were in striking distance in that first half until, Josh Johnson didn't know how to receive a snap anymore. But up until that point, they were still pretty competitive. The defense, I think, was holding in there a lot better than what I think, people give them credit for, because obviously, I think they let go of the rope in the second half. But overall, I don't think that I don't think that they look at it that way. And I think you can tell that based off of what they did in the offseason, right? They didn't just stand pat and think, let's just bring everybody back. They upgraded the defensive line. They brought in an outside defensive coordinator, even though the defense is pretty strong, to upgrade that secondary, right? And then, they made moves as far as replenishing the way they drafted, all that kind of stuff. I think shows that they don't think that they're just there and they could just do the same thing over and expect that all of a sudden now they're a Super Bowl team. So I would say their actions have shown that they know that they need to, take it a step up to be able to win.
Let's say they are operating under the assumption that really if they just had Purdy, they would have won the game, and they're really not caring too much about anything else. Do you think that would be a dangerous mindset to be in?
Yeah, because I don't think that even the Super Bowl champs think they could come back and just run it back. I think the NFL is different than other leagues where you don't, in the NBA, it's not hard to, or it's not unique to see back-to-back champions that just bring back the whole team and, maybe a bench player here and there, but you can see having consistent success. Whereas in the NFL, that's very, very hard to just bring back the same team and expect that you do better the next year. It doesn't work that way. So absolutely, that would be dangerous if they're like, we just have to keep Brock Purdy healthy and we're going to, run back with the same players and we're going to have the same success. I don't think that's how it works in the NFL.
Yeah, I completely agree. I actually do agree that the 49ers aren't just resting on their laurels, because the biggest point is exactly that. They looked at it and said, okay, not only are we going to upgrade our team, but we're going to do it by downgrading your team potentially. And getting Hargrave immediately was a huge step in that direction. I do, however, think that they really feel in their heart they were the better team at that moment, but they're not allowing that to stop them from trying to be even a better team than they were last year, which is the most important thing, regardless of what they thought about that game. And I actually think I do agree with you that Debo does believe that game would have been won had Purdy played, or any quarterback for that matter that was at least halfway decent. But I actually think for Debo, that's a good thing. For just his personal thing, Debo to me is really starting to show And I think a lot of great players, a majority of great players throughout history of all sports, have this ability to put a chip on their shoulder, to put a target on their back and go out and perform. And what Debo has done is he's attacked the Philadelphia Eagles every which way possible, putting pressure on himself when that game comes around. And he came out and said, hey, I wasn't in shape last year, put out a lot of bad film. I don't want to do that again. He's finding reasons to feel slighted just so that he can go out and perform. That's the feeling I'm getting from Debo Samuel coming into the season. Are you getting that same feeling?
Yeah, and I mean, you want your players to feel like the players having blind confidence in that if they had a starting level quarterback back there that they felt like they'd be better than the Eagles. You want that from your players. Now, from your front office and your coaching staff, that's different because they're like Debo has no say over personnel. Debo can't do anything to make the team better other than get better himself, right? That's the only thing he could really do to make the team better is elevate his style of play and get healthy, all those things that you talked about. But from an ultimate, how's the team going to get better? The players really don't have too much say over that. That's the front office and the coaching staff. So that's why I'm like, yeah, the players, they might feel that way. And I want them to have that confidence and that borderline arrogance because, look, you have to have that to be able to go up and beat these teams. You're not going to do it like by luck. You're going to do it because you believe in your team and you believe that you're the better team and you go out there and prove it. So, yeah, I think the front office and the coaching staff have shown what they felt like they were lacking to be able to go out there and make the team better. And then, the players, obviously, I don't think any of them are like, this team is better than us. I think they're just like, yo, they were better that day, but it was because our quarterback was not healthy kind of thing.
Yeah, most definitely. I think Debo's going to have such a good year this year. Like, I'm really excited to get Debo Samuel back, like the Debo Samuel back, because him and CMC paired together. How do you stop that? Like, just realistically, how do you actually stop that? I have no idea, man. I have no idea. So I'm excited about it.
I think the only thing that'll take away from Debo's year is how great Ayuk's going to be this year. So I think that, it's going to be interesting, Jesse, because I think this is the best that the 49ers weapons have been since Shanahan has been the quarterback or the coach, right? The quarterback, Freudian slip. Since Shanahan has been the coach, as far as running back, 2 legit receivers, and obviously Kittle. Is Shanahan going to do something that's out of his character and open up the passing game? Because there's absolutely a way where you can see a 1,000-yard rusher and 2,000-yard receivers, and whatever that combination is, whether it's Debo and Kittle, Ayuk and Kittle, or Ayuk and Debo, the only thing that would hold them back from being able to do that is if Shanahan, doesn't open up that passing game. So it's going to be interesting because I don't think he's had the talent to be able to do that. It's going to be interesting if he trusts his quarterbacks enough to be able to open that up, because I think he finally has all the weapons to make that happen.
Lobs All Day says our defense struggles against quarterbacks like Allen and Mahomes with mobility and arm. We can handle Burrow, in my opinion. We did when we played the Bengals in Cincy. Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you're just looking at who strikes fear in a defense, Burrow is very good, but he doesn't strike the fear that an Allen or a Mahomes does. So I agree with that. It's not necessarily about what you would prefer, I guess, as your quarterback, which I don't know what you would prefer, Lobs, but I would prefer a Mahomes on my team. A lot of people, an Allen on my team over Burrow. A lot of people wouldn't, but if I'm just going who would be harder to game plan for, absolutely, 100% it's Allen. That's a tough matchup. And we saw, I get it. It was a couple years ago, but man, the way that he cooked the 49ers, that was absolutely nasty. Absolutely nasty. Okay, so we've talked about the betting odds. We've talked about, does their view of the NFC Championship matter? And that brings me to the next topic, which is, how do they actually get that championship? So we can go back and forth, or you can give your points however you want to do this. I think there's multiple things that have to go right for the 49ers to win a Super Bowl. Like I said, it's very hard to do so. Sometimes the best team doesn't even necessarily win a Super Bowl. I feel like when the Patriots lost to the Giants, the undefeated Patriots lost to the Giants, they were probably the better team, but on that day they weren't better. And so sometimes the better team doesn't necessarily win. So that being the case, things have to break the 49ers way. What are a couple things that you think must happen for the 49ers to hoist that sixth Lombardi this season?
So are we going back and forth, or are we going to just put a list together?
It's up to you.
Let's go back and forth.
I'm gonna let you handle this one.
All right. Well, I think first and foremost, right? I mentioned, is Kyle Shanahan going to open up his offense and air the ball out? You know, the reason why I say that, Jesse, is even when Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator in Atlanta with Matt Ryan, who, you know, had a MVP like season under him, he was bottom 5. The offensive have been bottom 5 in pass attempts per game, and that's been consistent even in 2019 when the 49ers made it to the Super Bowl, bottom 5 in passing attempts per game. So even though I think that he has the weapons to be able to do that, and I do believe that Purdy or Lance can both air the ball out a lot better than, you know, what he's had previously, I don't think he's going to be able to do that. So one metric to me that will show the overall health of the offense is this rushing attack has to be top 3. And the reason for that is obviously that means that the offense is running well, because that's what Kyle Shanahan builds his offense around, is a strong running game. And 2, to me, that'll show that the health of the offensive line is also very, very good. So the first metric I'm looking at is, are the 49ers a top 3 rushing attack? In 2019, when they went to the Super Bowl, they were obviously top 3. I think obviously having CMC there for a full year is going to help towards that. The continuity of the offensive line is going to help towards that. And then I think Mason is probably going to be RB2. I think his emergence can really help with that as well, because I think he could stay more durable than Elijah Mitchell. The next thing to me, the next metric I'm looking at is turnover differential. If this defense can lead the league in turnover differential like they were able to do last season, to me, that means short field positions. That means, being able to put the offense in good situations, to be able to put those points up. And especially if their rushing attack is where I'm saying it needs to be, then you're talking about clock management, all that type of stuff that really helps make it very, very tough for the 49ers to be beat. So those are 2 metrics that I'm looking at that I think need to happen for the 49ers to hoist number 6. I don't want to take over the whole show, Jesse, so I'm going to throw it back to you. And what do you think? What do you think about those metrics, and what are some that you would add to that?
No, I love them. I mean, turnover differential is huge. Whenever you're winning the turnover battle, you're usually winning games. Yeah. And the 49ers were able to put up a ton of points towards the tail end of last year, in large part because they were forcing a ton of turnovers and not turning over the ball. And so the offense and the defense were complementing each other beautifully. I'm actually not necessarily looking at some of the metrics. I'm looking at some of the intangible stuff, things that just kind of happened throughout the season. And actually the chat immediately got the first 2 I was thinking of. Mike comes through and says, we have to start hot this year, get that number 1 seed. Definitely. Number 1 seed is so important. That bye week is going to be so important. The one thing that you're seeing more often than not is that teams are just wearing down. And this has happened to the 49ers. I feel like really every deep run that they've made, no matter how good and how dominant that defensive line has been, at times they fizzle out towards the end of the year. And it usually happens like at the worst time: Super Bowl, NFC Championship. And that's just not having the rest that you need to go make these runs. It's a grueling season. And when you're having your bye week, week 8, week 9, or worse, if you have it earlier, you're going on this crazy run, especially if you start slow. You got to win 12 straight. You got to win 9 of your last 10. Just all these crazy runs where every game has playoff game intensity for like 10, 12 week stretches at a time. The 49ers can't fall into that trap again. And I believe that they're going to need that bye week. I think the good news is that they are a good enough team in the NFC to get that done. I hope that they get it done, but I think that's going to be a must this year. They're going to need that bye week in order to make things happen. So that's number one. And then number two, luck, man. You got to be healthy. Last year, it's one thing we don't talk about, and it struck at the worst time with Brock Purdy getting injured in that NFC Championship game. But the team as a whole, making that final push the last few games of the season, was extremely healthy. And that's something that we haven't necessarily seen year in and year out. So let's hope that, any injuries they have are like 1 or 2 week type injuries to the big name players, but nothing serious. They need to stay healthy. Again, it's a war of attrition. It means a bye week is going to be beneficial going into the playoffs, and health is going to be beneficial going into the playoffs. I agree with Mike and John. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think that this defensive line has to produce 2 guys that get double-digit sacks. And the reason why I think that's important, Jesse, is we can't keep it all on Bosa, because we've seen that Bosa has been a defense, or once you get to these playoff teams, they have done a really good job figuring out a way to make Bosa less impactful. And the reason they're able to do that is because I feel like he's overshadowed the defensive line so much during the regular season that I don't know if it's a confidence thing or it's just they don't have that killer instinct developed at the end of this, in the playoffs, to be able to really make it easier for Bosa to get some one-on-one battles that he could do. And I think that needs to be developed throughout throughout the regular season. Like, it can't just be, the 49ers are up there as overall sacks, but it's because Bosa has 20, right? And the rest of the team has 5 guys that have 6 sacks or whatever it is. I think that, Armstead, needs to be, 6 to 8 sacks. I think Hargrave needs to be close to 10 sacks. I think, Bosa, obviously, you could pencil him in for double-digit sacks, but who's going to be that? Is it going to be Armstead? Is it going to be Hargrave? Is it going to be, a Drake Jackson or a Cleveland Farrell? Like, who's going to step up and be that guy? Because I don't think we can just settle for the rotation of 5 or 6 guys that get those 6, 7 sacks. We need a couple, 2 or 3 guys that are just super dominant. That makes it hard for offensive lines to really figure out who they're gonna throw that double team to.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I would say the next thing for me would be quarterback play. We don't necessarily need a top 10 quarterback all year long, but once it comes to playoff time, whoever that quarterback is has to get hot and play like a top 10 quarterback. What you've seen in NFL history is 43, 57 Super Bowls, 58 Super Bowls, whatever it is. 43 of those Super Bowls have been won by Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks. And the ones that weren't won by Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks, most of the time are won by quarterbacks that played like Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks for a run. Go look at Joe Flacco's numbers the year they won the Super Bowl. Go look at that playoff run. Go look at Nick Foles' run. Those were incredible runs. They played like elite quarterbacks. I think gone are the days that you can win a Super Bowl with a quarterback like a Trent Dilfer, or even a Peyton Manning at the end of his run was certainly not the same Peyton Manning. I think those Super Bowls are very, very hard to win. Luckily, I think regardless of who plays quarterback, as long as it's not Sam Darnold, you're going to get much better quarterback play than those 2 guys. And so for me, you don't necessarily have to worry about carrying a quarterback the way that maybe some of those other teams did to win a Super Bowl. But I think in order to beat an Allen, a Mahomes, a Burrow, a Hurts, whoever, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, you're going to have a quarterback playing at a very, very high level during a playoff run. So I think that's the next thing that I'll be looking for come playoff time.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. My next one is, who's going to be the 3rd guy in the cornerback room that steps up, right? So we've seen, the 49ers, whenever they have the deep run in the playoffs, one of their corners is going to get injured and somebody has to step up. Last year, obviously, it was Lenore. Previously it's been Mosley. We obviously pencil in Mooney Ward. He's, CB1 right now. Lenore CB2. But with how much offenses now depend on their wide receivers, and it's a gauntlet, right? It seems like every team has 2 or 3 really good receivers that you're going to need to be able to cover. If one of these guys goes down, which it's NFL football, the cornerback position, we're going to see injuries there. Who's going to step up? Is it going to be Womack, who obviously is showing waves? I think, he's probably, if we're putting our money on, he's going to be the guy. But he hasn't necessarily shown it in obviously his rookie year. He had some flashes, but is he going to take that next step to be that guy that could step in if Mooney or Lenore get injured? Can he come in and really hold down the fort on the opposite side of whoever's healthy? Or is it somebody that, we're not looking at? So I think that's going to be extremely important, because we've seen how this team looks, namely the one year that we didn't make it to the NFC Championship game. In the last 4 years, what happened to our cornerback room? We were getting guys off of the couch to play corner, and obviously it didn't lead to the playoffs. And when we have a healthy secondary, we're a playoff team. So I think that's going to be a huge, huge factor for the 49ers as well.
Most definitely. I have one more, but I want to get to the comments, because the comments are right in line with what we're talking about as well after we get past this one. Damon says, an 11-point increase in points from Jimmy to Purdy. How many points is because of better quarterback play? Sorry if you answered it and I missed it. This one's tough. So first of all, I don't want to go off the overall points from Jimmy to Purdy, because there was also a major point differential when you went from Jimmy pre-CMC and Jimmy post-CMC. So before CMC, they were at 18 points a game. Post CMC, they went up to 26. So really, Jimmy was CMC year at 26. Purdy was CMC year at 33. You've got a 7-point differential right there. And then, I don't know. I mean, I'll let you all argue and figure this out. But one thing I do know is that in line with Purdy taking over, the forced turnovers from the 49ers doubled. So instead of being at around 1 forced turnover per game, they doubled that to over 2 forced turnovers per game with Brock Purdy. Every game that Brock Purdy played, they forced at least 1 turnover. And in 7 of the 8 games, they forced at least 2 turnovers. When you look at the previous 11 games or whatever it was, there was multiple games where they forced 0 turnovers, and then multiple games where they forced 1 turnover. So there's a happy medium there. But what I will say is, obviously, I feel a lot more comfortable with Brock Purdy playing quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. And regardless of how small the sample size was, all I needed was 1 game to show me that Brock Purdy in the playoffs is a whole different ballgame than Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's all I need. So I don't know how many points was because of Purdy versus Jimmy. I mean, that's really impossible to say. But when it mattered most, I trust Brock Purdy, and I didn't trust Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's all that matters. So I'll say that. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Sunil?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was probably the first person that brought up the whole CMC was the real reason why this offense,
for sure,
moved up, and I took a lot of arrows for that. But I think Purdy definitely plays a role in. I think this offense is way better under Purdy than it is under Jimmy. I think that some of that point differential has to do. I don't know what piece of the pie is Purdy, but he's part of the pie, right? Because to have a plus turnover differential, not only does the defense need to create turnovers, but the offense needs to not create turnovers. And, Purdy, even in a small sample size, has shown that he's better with the ball than Jimmy, even though, I think Purdy has a lot of interceptions that are dropped. But at least if you just look at his stats, he's not throwing as many interceptions as Jimmy has in his career, even though Jimmy also was interception free once CMC joined the offense as well. So personally, to me, I think CMC is the biggest piece of the pie. The defense would be, a big piece, and then Purdy in that order. But, who am I?
Yeah, I think it's tough to know the effect of CMC on Purdy because we never saw Purdy without CMC. But we do know that there was an effect on this team because, again, the points went from 18 to 26. And Jimmy, in his whole career, had never gone 3 straight games without a turnover, Sunil. And the
think he went
moment
4.
that CMC was here, he goes 4 straight. That's
Right.
not a coincidence. That is not
Yeah.
a coincidence. And if you just look at him play, Jimmy was a lot more comfortable in the pocket with CMC there. You could see that all over the place. Like his feet, he was a lot more calm. You saw it immediately in that Rams game. Instant calmness. And that was a game that, did Debo play? I don't think Debo played in that game. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he did. I feel like Debo didn't play in that game. Either way, CMC made him feel very comfortable, and then that showed in the stat sheet. So what is that impact on Purdy? No idea, because we don't know what the before was. There was no before. We just know that it did impact this team in a positive way. So thank goodness we got both. The coach says, very encouraged with what we can do early. I'd love to see BA, Danny, Debo, George, and CMC on the field at the same time. Starting strong is a must this year. Our travel schedule is brutal. No time to recover. It's huge. Yeah, you know what? I would like to see some 5 wide. And I think that would be a fun 5 wide. So you said BA, Danny, Debo, George, and CMC. I can rock with that. That's a good 5 to throw out there to pass to. Absolutely. Right. You got Danny can take the top off. Same with BA. You got deep over routes or digs from Debo. George Kittle can hit you up the seam. CMC can literally do everything. Yeah, I think that would be really hard to stop if you're going 5 wide. No doubt about it. And then Twisted Clown says, in order to win, Kyle must let go of some control. Well, Shayna Stan, why don't you tell me? Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what do you mean by control? Because I think a lot of people don't understand Shanahan's offense. Really has everything you need to be successful, but ultimately the quarterback is going to determine how that offense looks, right? So people think that, a lot of people that are pro Purdy think that this offense was so much different when Purdy was in there than when Jimmy was in there. But the scheme didn't change. What changed was the ability of the quarterback and the decision-making of the quarterback. I think one of the reasons why people criticize Shanahan with Trey Lance is that the scheme seemed to have changed a little bit with Trey Lance, right? Where there's more power running from the quarterback, which isn't there with Purdy or Jimmy. So when it's like he needs to let go of control, in what way? Like, do you not want him to control every single offensive scheme? Because I wouldn't want that. I think he's one of the best, if not the best, at drawing up scheme on the offensive side. Like, these quarterbacks are getting wide open throws to really good weapons, whether it be wide open Kittle down the middle, wide open BA and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, where does he need to let go of some control? To me, at this point, the roster is already set. I think he's gonna call the plays the way he's gonna call the plays. Who do you want calling the plays other than him?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing that I can think of maybe is like from a game management perspective, like little things. You look at that Philadelphia Eagles game, and Hufanga right away was like, it was incomplete. It was incomplete. And I mean, I don't know what Kyle was doing. Probably face buried in the play sheet, getting ready to go on offense. I don't know, but the stuff like that is probably where you would say, because Kyle really is a phenomenal game planner, and when he's in his bag, I mean, I don't know if there's anybody better outside of Andy Reid, probably.
Yeah,
but I don't know if there's anybody better. It's just whenever you hit those weird game situations, how are you managing that, or who's managing that, and are you willing to listen to them? I've got to imagine those checks and balances are in place. Ultimately, everything falls on Kyle Shanahan's shoulders for those situations. And so it's tough because we don't know who's supposed to be the quality control during those games and figuring that stuff out. But definitely you would like to at least see it show up throughout the games in these big moments, because as of now, it doesn't seem to show up in these moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, I think that the progression of Kyle Shanahan, you've seen him, I think a lot of the characteristics that people judged him on or criticized him on in the beginning of his tenure here, I think he's changed a lot of people's perception of him. with his ability to give up a little bit more quote unquote control. You've seen him, take input from players and make decisions based off of that. You've seen him, give more credit to some of the other coaches on the defensive side and all that kind of stuff. But I think Twisted Clown put up something as far as he doesn't want Kyle Shanahan to coach. I just think that's a unfair narrative. Like, what about Kyle Shanahan's coaching can you say is somewhere where he shouldn't be coaching? Like that, I don't understand. I think that's just like one of those things where it's like, well, he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, so he's a terrible coach. Like, all right, like 97% of the league doesn't win a Super Bowl, right? He's been in 3 of the last 4 NFC Championship games. He's had 0 downhill when he's had with all the coaching changes that have made. There's been 0 effect on the defense. In fact, they've even gotten better under his tenure. They've continued to take late round players and make them bona fide starters and even, all pro players with Hufanga. So what can you point to as far as his coaching to be like, nah, he shouldn't be coaching? Like, all right, maybe there's some criticism with some of the choices he makes in game management, but that's a decision, right? Hindsight's 2020. Everybody's always gonna, if they make the wrong choice, they're always gonna be able to be like, oh, I would have made a different choice. All right, cool. Well, you would never be in that moment because you're not as good of a coach as Kyle Shanahan to even be in that moment to have to make that type of decision. So I think that's a false narrative that he's a bad coach. He's just an offensive coordinator. Once again, I think those are the same people that are like, well, he hasn't won a Super Bowl. Well, neither did Andy Reid till he got Patrick Mahomes, and now all of a sudden he's the best coach in the league.
Yeah, he's definitely not a bad coach. There's areas of opportunity, but he's definitely not a bad coach. Hiroski says CMC didn't win without Purdy. Were they not, when he was fully integrated in the offense, were they not 4-0 with Jimmy? I don't. Yeah. Maybe I'm misremembering things. I feel like they were 4-0 with Jimmy. So you mean in the NFC Championship when there was 0 quarterbacks that didn't win? Okay, I guess that's fair. Let's take away every wide receiver away from the 49ers and every running back and be like, all right, Purdy, go win the game. Like that wouldn't have happened either. So I don't know. CMC won some games with Jimmy Garoppolo just fine. What's up, Eric? Royalty in the house. We got to get that. It's never going to happen because first of all, let's be clear. Pinelli's a slacker. You know it, and I know it. He's my friend to me, but that guy's a slacker. There's no way all 4 of us are going to get on a show together, Croc. But we'll keep acting like it's going to happen at some point. But we know it's not. I had one more thing, by the way. I completely forgot. The offensive line has to play well also. They have to allow the quarterback to stay upright. If the quarterback's going to play elite, he's going to need some time. He's going to need protection. So for me, the last thing I would like to add is the offensive line playing well down the stretch. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Obviously, you're going to play some beasts, especially once you get to the playoffs. But you can't have a situation where you run up against, let's say, the Philadelphia Eagles and you get absolutely dominated. They have to hold their own in those situations, give their quarterback time and allow them to go out and make plays. Quarterback's not going to be able to do it if they're under fire all day long. So the last thing for me, for them to hoist number 6 would be exactly that. You got to protect the quarterback.
I got one more too.
Okay, let's do it.
Jake MNFN Moody.
I like it. Okay.
Has to bail out this team in a couple of games, right? We've seen how close these games get, especially when you're playing the better quality teams. A field goal is going to be the difference in a lot of these games. His ability to be pretty much automatic, like Robbie Gould had been in the past, and having that ability to stretch, maybe even give us an opportunity to even score points where we wouldn't have been able to score points before because his leg is stronger, I think is going to be extremely important. So special teams overall, obviously, but especially Jake Moody, there's a lot of pressure on him from the fan base like you because he got drafted. No fault of his own. He was just there, right? The 49ers picked him where they picked him. But obviously, that's going to be a lot of pressure. There's going to be a lot of people that are looking at that for it to pay off right away, and he's going to have to show that. Just like we talk about the quarterbacks, these young quarterbacks jumping in on a win now team, a young kicker is in that same kind of echelon in the sense that he's going to be on the field. It's going to be coming down to him, and he will be remembered either for making the winning field goal or losing or missing the winning field goal. A lot of pressure on a young guy to be in that type of position, so he has to step up as well.
No, that's a great call because Robbie Gould is automatic 45 and under. I mean, he doesn't miss in the playoffs, and that's where Moody's going to have to be good as well. And you're right. If you miss a big kick as a kicker, you will forever go down in infamy in a bad way. In fact, I posted this on Twitter Friday night, but we had my son's 9th birthday party. So this was Friday night. We're on our way back. It's about a 40-minute drive from where we're coming back from. And my son is in the back with a couple of his friends, and they're just talking about football. And his friend literally says, there's only one football player I hate. Do you hate anybody, they always say, Mr. Jesse. Do you hate anybody, Mr. Jesse? I'm like, no, I don't really, hate players. There's players I dislike, but I don't really hate anybody. He goes, yeah, the only player that I hate, he's a Bills fan. He goes, Scott Norwood. It's the only player I hate. 9 years old. Bro, this happened how many years before he was born? And it's still in his family. The hate is passed down many generations later. So, Moody, please don't put yourself in a situation where you miss a kick in an important moment and forever are remembered 40 years later from people that weren't even close to being born. I don't want that to be you. So please don't miss the important kick when you're in that situation, for the love of God. I thought that was pretty funny, though. Kaleki says, Steve Wilks is the X factor this year. DBs are going to be fire. I love the Steve Wilks hire. We talked about it before he was hired. We really, really liked the Steve Wilks was even in this interview process. And once he got hired, we definitely celebrated here. I agree, man. I think that Steve Wilks bringing a different dynamic. I like his aggression. I like his personality type. It definitely fits in with what the 49ers have had in the past or seemingly have had. I think it's going to be a smooth transition for Wilks. And you can just tell by the way he talks, he really holds himself to a high standard. Number one defense last year. And he's like, yeah, but we got to be better in a lot of areas. All right, dude. I mean, it was already the number one defense, but okay. Yeah. So I love to hear that, though. I'm excited for defense for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot of pressure on him too. Like, he's well respected in the league, but he hasn't necessarily performed that great. His defenses at least haven't been rated that high. He's obviously never had this type of talent either. So I think he needs to step in and kind of prove himself. And if he has that ambition to be a coach, obviously this is the best route to be defensive coordinator under Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. 2 years, end up head coaching job.
Yeah. The coach says, who taps Kyle on the shoulder when he gets tunnel vision as an OC? Who can change the tide when Kyle needs more help as a head coach during games? He needs to relinquish more. The team is ready. He needs to be more of a head coach. I actually agree with this to a certain extent because I'm big on head coaches that don't have play calling duties. I like head coaches to be CEOs and kind of able to manage everything. I think that's where you find the most success long term. That being said, obviously that's who we have in Kyle. He is going to call plays, but there has to be somebody that can check him at the right time and be like, hey man, probably should run the ball here. Or, hey man, maybe we should try this here. And somebody that he trusts and is going to listen to, not just somebody that has the guts to do it, but somebody that he's actually going to listen to and trust. We don't know if that exists or if it doesn't exist, but you would like to see it show itself in these big moments. No doubt about it. What say you, Sunil?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that guy was McDaniel, and he's over there coaching Miami. You know what I mean? So it's like
the same thing.
Yeah, so it's nice. I mean, obviously, I think, Coach, you absolutely make a great point, but cool. Maybe Anthony Lynn. He obviously has been a coach in the league. He's well respected. I think they have a really great relationship. Maybe Bobby Turner, him coming back. He could be somebody like that. So I'm sure there's somebody in there. And once again, like the 49ers are extremely secretive with the internal workings of what's going on there. We're just assuming that Kyle Shanahan doesn't listen to anybody, right? But
right, and that's what I said. You just want it to show itself, because we can't say for sure what is and what isn't, but it has to show itself, and that's where the disconnect is at. Whether it's there or not, who knows? I agree.
Yeah, we don't know if any of the other coaches wouldn't have made those same choices.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, we're just seeing it like, once again, hindsight's 2020. Maybe in the moment, you said in the moment you would have thrown the challenge flag, but maybe nobody on the 49er staff I didn't see anybody in Kyle Shanahan's ear on the coaching staff that was like, yo, we should do it. You know what I mean? So I think it's all just a narrative that's created because the team hasn't won yet.
Yeah, most definitely. And unfortunately, those narratives are going to exist when you haven't won the big one yet. 49ers Daddy says, does Kyle Shanahan choke in the biggest moments? Oh, choke is a strong word. It's a strong word.
I think it's hard.
I don't know
to
if
say
he
that
outright chokes, but he definitely doesn't put his best foot forward, it seems like, in the biggest moments. When you've had 3 times your offense go into a fourth quarter with a 10-point lead or bigger in massive moments, twice in a Super Bowl, once in an NFC championship, and you don't come away with a victory in any of those 3 games, it's not a good look. Now, the first one, it's like, okay, well, he wasn't the head coach. Quinn could have stepped in and changed things for sure. But what you can't do, and what I see happen a lot, is like, well, what about the defense? The defense should have stepped up. Well, that's on Kyle Shanahan as well. Kyle Shanahan's the head coach of this team. He's not just the offensive coordinator. So if the defense doesn't do what it's supposed to do, well, that's being coached by Kyle Shanahan, who's the head coach. So at some point, he's got to take some accountability. I don't know if he outright chokes, but he definitely doesn't put his best foot forward. That is certainly the truth.
Yeah. Well, his 10-point deficits in the Super Bowl have come against the 2 greatest quarterbacks of all time. So one is Tom Brady, who is the greatest right now. The other is Patrick Mahomes, who will probably go down as the greatest when all is said and done with his career. But yeah, I think it's tough to say if a coach chokes, because ultimately they call the plays, and there's certain nuances that are forgotten, like pass interference, jumping off sides, things like that. Is that really the coach's fault because people had anxiety or, got nervous and pulled and all that kind of stuff? I don't know. I think that's tough to put on a coach, but ultimately the buck stops with him. So it's going to be a monkey on his back until, he wins the big one.
Yeah. I get the feeling that if they win a Super Bowl, he's going to go Steve Young and be like, get the monkey off my back. And you're going to see that video of them pulling the monkey off his back, because if anybody's got it on his back, it's Kyle Shanahan at this point. And I agree. I mean, the Super Bowl, yes, it was against the 2 best of all time, but it still happened. And then it happened with Matt Stafford as well in the NFC Championship game. So I don't know. Like, at some point, it's kind of on you, coach. A lot of pieces change, but you stayed the same. Twisted Clown says, game management exactly. Why not have someone watch it for him? You're right. I don't have the same last name. That's just life, though. I think we kind of answered this one, Twisted Clown. We just don't know. We don't know what the checks and balances are, but it does seem like those checks and balances don't show through in big moments, and that's where the frustration comes in. So then the assumption automatically goes to, well, you must not have these checks and balances in place, which they may be. We just don't know what they are. So it would be nice if they showed up for sure. John B says, do we really believe the Niners think that they can win a Super Bowl with a non-elite quarterback in Purdy, even though all the other Super Bowl contenders have elite quarterbacks? Yeah, they do think so. I think that they think so. Yeah. I mean, because they could have had Tom Brady and they chose not to go that route. So I feel like with this formula, they think it can happen. And I think there are some people in the chat that would argue and say that Purdy is an elite quarterback. Major pushback from me on that end. But I think some people would argue that. I think some people would argue that you can win a Super Bowl without an elite quarterback if he's not an elite quarterback. Although there's pushback from me on that as well. So I don't know. I think the 49ers definitely believe it, though. No doubt about it. Do you think the 49ers believe it, Sunil?
Do they believe they could win a Super Bowl? Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, if they could have been done more at the quarterback position if they felt like they needed to. I think they absolutely believe in, what the word elite obviously is. How do you quantify that? I think that as long as the offense could perform at a certain level, that that's what you need. Like, it's not like this offense was putting up 14 points a game and this defense was just overwhelming, kind of like how the Baltimore Ravens won, or Tampa Bay won under Gruden. This offense was still able to put up close to 30 points a game. So maybe they don't have a Patrick Mahomes who is putting up 4,000 yards passing or whatnot, but offense is still extremely effective. So I think that's why they believe they could win a Super Bowl still.
I just saw an alert come across my phone. Oh, Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill being investigated in an alleged assault and battery in Miami by Miami-Dade police.
Yeah, supposedly, allegedly, he slapped somebody, one of the workers on a boat. But
oh, really?
Yeah, like just I guess on the back of the head, he like slapped him. And last I read, that the guy wasn't trying to press charges, so maybe this is just the police have to investigate.
Well, let's hope that it didn't happen. That would suck for Miami. Mike says, why are we not using the last little bit of money to sign a dominant edge to help Bosa? Look at all these D linemen that would complement Bosa. I think I've talked about this a little bit, Mike, and I feel like Sunil agrees. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But if I'm the 49ers, I'm waiting. They definitely have money. They're going to get more when they restructure or re-sign Bosa, extend Bosa. So I would say be patient as long as you can, because you don't know what Drake Jackson is yet. Maybe Drake Jackson can be that guy, or maybe somebody else steps up. If they are not that guy, then definitely you can go out and get that guy. They have the assets to do so. They have the money to do so. But what if they feel like they've solved that issue opposite of Bosa, and you get 4 weeks into the season and you have an injury somewhere else along the offensive line or secondary, and now you've spent your money, you've spent your assets to go get a pass rusher that you may not have necessarily needed. So I would say if I'm the 49ers, definitely spend that money at some point. But if you can wait even until the trade deadline, I'm fine with that. Because right now, I think in our mind, the glaring need is a dominant edge rusher. You got guys like Yannick Ngakoue out there. You've got guys like Danielle Hunter and Chase Young who seem to be on the trade block, but don't panic yet. You don't know exactly what you have. At least get through training camp, figure it out, and go from there. And maybe that guy is an elite edge rusher or just a really good edge rusher, and you end up spending the money there anyways, but maybe it's not, and you panicked and spent the money early. So I would say hold off as long as you can. You agree, disagree, Sunil?
I agree, but for a different reason. I think Mike kind of answered the question in his question.
Yeah.
Look at all these D linemen that would complement Bosa. I think the fact that there's so many still left unsigned, it's smarter to wait, because the longer you wait, the cheaper they get. Right. So as it gets closer and closer, and it gets closer and closer to these training camps, these guys are going to want to be signed and in a training camp as soon as possible. Right now, a lot of these guys that are the compliments are looking for bigger money, maybe more years than the 49ers are willing to give right now. And, they're just waiting for those dominoes to fall. So you don't want to buy high, like you want to have your money stretched. So, if Yannick right now is waiting for a multiple year deal, gets closer to training camp, and he's just like, now I need to get on the team. Well, maybe he's more prone to take that 1 year deal that the 49ers are looking to give him versus the long-term deals that some of these other guys are looking for.
And there's a lot of guys out there. I mean, maybe I missed some of these guys being signed, but I think Jadeveon Clowney's still out there. Houston's still out there. So there's guys that you can go get on 1 year deals that can help out that won't be that expensive, I feel like. So right. I would say just be patient. I agree with that. Let's see. Coach says, damn, coach, forking over the money tonight, huh? We're definitely assuming. I get that. But the failures seem so out of character to the success and their same failures. Game management, injuries, QB development, scouting, protection. Let's not act like this isn't redundant. Oh, for sure. Coach, you and I agree on this. Like, there's a lot of things that Kyle does really well. And there is definitely some things right now that are to be desired. And until those things show through in the biggest moments, it's an issue. So until you win a Super Bowl without that quarterback position's an issue. Until you win a Super Bowl without those flubs coming up to bite you in the butt, losing 10-point leads, it's an issue. So it's an issue until it's not an issue, basically. I agree with you until they win a Super Bowl. And time's gonna tell. I mean, this window per se is closing quickly. They need to figure it out, and they need to figure it out quick. Tyler says, I think it is particularly laziness at the QB position as well, Jess. Just from a standpoint that they are 7 years in and we don't really necessarily have a quarterback. Is that kind of what you're saying? Because they definitely have flubbed up a little bit there for sure. I don't know if it's laziness per se, but they didn't kick the tires on all of the players that they should have kicked the tires on. So,
yeah, I think that's definitely a fair criticism of Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. Is his inability to, get the right quarterback here. For everything else that they've been able to do, they haven't been able to solve that QB position. Maybe Purdy or Trey is that person, but we still don't know yet. But that's a fair criticism for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, let's get into this next topic here. If the 49ers don't win a ring this year, can this season be deemed a success, in your opinion? Is there any way out other than winning a ring?
The easy answer is no, because I think this team is built to win a championship, and they've been so close and been so dominant in the NFC for so long that they need to win one. But the silver lining would be if they lose somehow, close game, right? That could have gone either way, but we figured out the QB position.
You're here running around in my mind right now. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So if there's like some reason why we lose, but it was like, could have gone either way, 50-50, which we've seen. Like, I think this Super Bowl, the Eagles losing, I don't think the Eagles necessarily got beat. It was so close. One, penalty that, was definitely a penalty, but, I don't think that means a team is so much better than the other team. So if there's something like that happens, but either Brock Purdy plays lights out the whole season or Trey Lance is playing and they're lights out and we're like, yo, this is the guy, I think it could still be a success, because moving forward now, we don't have the same question mark that we've had for the last 5 seasons, like George Kittle so eloquently put in his tight end university press run.
Yeah, he definitely went on that press run, didn't he? I agree. And actually, you don't even need to find the quarterback. You just need to find out if you have that guy or you don't. I think a success would also be like, obviously we wouldn't be happy if Purdy or Lance weren't the guy. But if you came out of this season and you knew for a fact that neither were the guy, at least you have more answers than what you have right now. Because what you have right now is you have this hope that one or both could be the guy, and you can squash that one way or another. Either one is the guy or neither are the guy, but you have to figure that out. And I think that could be deemed a success this year. Now, it's not necessarily deemed a success overall that you haven't figured out the quarterback position. There's still going to be that frustration, but at least you know more at the end of the season, presumably, than what you know right now. But I feel like I've been saying this for many, many years, so maybe they won't know.
I don't think finding out that neither of these guys is the guy can be deemed as a success, because then you're actually further behind now. Because now you have to find a guy, and is it going to be Kirk Cousins? Is it going to be some guy that they draft? Or they might be stuck and they have to deal with what they have on the roster. Like, so to me, it's the only way other than winning the Super Bowl is losing very close, but knowing you have the guy at quarterback. realizing you don't have the guy, I don't think it's like addition by subtraction in that sense. At that point, you just kind of wasted a season.
Ooh, speed racer in the background. You hear that?
Unfortunately, I hear that all day, every day, even at midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Where I live, it's so close to the freeway, and there's a stoplight right here, and everybody thinks they're speed racers. So,
yeah,
welcome to my life.
I'll say this though: I think getting Kirk Cousins next year would be a success. So maybe it is a success.
Yeah, you say that now, man. You say that now.
Yeah, Sushi, that was my soundboard. I hit the soundboard on accident. I didn't mean to. My bad.
It was the wrap it up sound that he has.
Yeah. He knows now. All right. Stop talking. Tyler says, Jesse, is it going to be a failure because we are a very top heavy roster and the top heavy players are older, especially Trent? This might be Trent's last year no matter what. That would definitely suck if they don't win a Super Bowl and then he's out the door. So
do we have a top heavy roster with older players? I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, I'll say this. One thing that was kind of eye-opening to me is every year PFF or whatever publication puts out the best players in the league 25 and under or under 25. And every year the 49ers got a player or multiple players on this list. They're not on that list anymore. It means everybody's getting just a little bit older, you know?
Yeah, because they're 26.
A couple of them are, but
okay, let's talk about the core. CMC, you considering him old? He's 26 years old. He has another 3.
As a running backs go at any time. I mean, he and Zeke Elliott are like the same age, and Zeke's shot. He's done. So,
are they the same age? I don't know that. But let's say, okay, let's say I think CMC, Kittle probably on the older side. Is Fred Warner considered old?
No.
Is Bosa considered old?
No.
Is Debo considered old? Maybe, but still, he still has 3-4 years.
He's not old. He's not considered old at the position, but just the way he plays, it could come off at any time. Like,
but we're going old, right? Is he old?
No.
Is Brandon Ayuk old?
No.
Is Hufanga old?
No.
Okay, so I just named the 8 players that you would probably consider the core, and 2 of them. Maybe 2.5 if you consider CMC old, but he's 26-year-old. I don't consider him old. But let's say 3. So 60% of the core is still young, and I would say even more than that because I don't consider CMC old. So once again, I think these narratives are being created. I think these narratives are being created out of nowhere. This team, and we have like the bench already drafted and being developed to take over that spots, right? So I think this team is in a really good position, and there's no need to press any panic buttons with this team. We need a new coach. We need, all of these things that people are just like, we need to change things up. It's like, trust the process. This is a lot farther than we've been at any time in recent measures. And yeah, you could be like, we could judge it based off of the 80s and the 15 years of success that the 49ers have, or all the other years that the 49ers have been around, right? Bill Walsh isn't walking through that door. Joe Montana isn't walking through that door. Steve Young, Jerry Rice, they're not walking through that door. So what are we judging this based off of? Like, I just think that the 49ers have the foundation to not only win a Super Bowl, but win multiple Super Bowls if we just have a little bit of patience and let them just find that last piece, which is the quarterback, right? Once we have that quarterback, I think the whole conversation changes.
Yeah, I do want to say this though, and this is where I agree with Tyler, is one way or another, we're coming to the end on a few of these guys.
Yeah.
Trent Williams is right there. Debo they're going to possibly have to choose between Ayuk and Debo. And so whether Debo is old or not, he may not be here. Juice is not going to be back. I mean, I would be shocked if he was back. He's been a pretty key part to this team. So you're starting to lose some of those key parts. And then, Kittle's not necessarily old, but he kind of has that Gronk thing to him where he's just been banged up a ton, missed games here or there. How long does it last for him? It's just like every season that passes by, you're getting one step closer for a lot of these guys. And so, yeah, you still have a good core, but right now you have all pros all over the place. If you remove 3 or 4 of those guys and you still haven't figured out the quarterback position, losing 3 of those guys is a big deal. Like that becomes a very big deal because now you've got to hit again on those positions. You got to find those replacements. You got to make sure that you're hitting in the draft or however you're replacing them. So it becomes very, very tough to maintain success without that quarterback. And that's what's interesting about the quarterback position to me is it's the hardest to find elite players at, bar none. It is very hard to find elite quarterbacks. But once you find one, it makes your job so much easier. It's so much easier to win with an elite quarterback and a good roster versus having to have everybody be elite to make up for a non-elite quarterback. So it's just an interesting situation when you're talking about the quarterback position.
Right. But what I'm saying is once they find that, then they don't have to be as perfect as they've been in
for sure
drafting and developing.
For sure.
But if they could combine the two, because you don't expect them to all of a sudden just forget how to draft and develop, but then they have that QB. What I'm saying is like they have this foundation. I think some would say it might be even harder to do the drafting and developing type thing than it is to just like find the quarterback. And what I mean by harder is, you know, other than Andy Reid, the people that have found their guy, it was kind of easy choice. Like Jacksonville Jaguars picking Trevor Lawrence, right? Justin Herbert. These are top 6 picks. Like Joe Burrow. Maybe you can even say Buffalo with Josh Allen, even though he was, you know, a highly drafted quarterback. Like that's kind of easier than finding Hufanga in the 5th round and he being an all-pro in his 2nd year, or finding Fred Warner in the 3rd round and he being the best linebacker. And you know what I mean? Like that I think is more difficult than the quarterback thing. And if Trey turns out to be the guy, if Purdy turns out to be the guy, like then it's solved, right? You have the best of everything. So I just think people are trying to pull the ripcord because of lack of patience when we don't realize how close we are in that sentiment because of all the other things that we're really, really good at that people just don't pay attention to.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's time to panic per se, but would you agree that the window's starting to close here pretty quickly on us? Like, I don't think so at all. Okay.
Because here's the thing, like
what? Okay. Let me ask you that. Let me rephrase the question. If the scenario happens where Brock Purdy or Trey Lance are not the guy, is it starting to close?
No.
Okay.
Because then they could then Kirk Cousins comes in, or they get, you know, some of these guys that could come in and where they know they have a guy that could play the position. To me, I think it's so underrated how good the 49ers have been at developing a roster. It's not because they're bringing in all of these free agents, right? I could see the window closed for the Rams, right? But it wasn't because they were drafting and developing their people. It was because they were giving up draft picks and bringing in these free agents. So they were like one and done, and they just fell off the map, can't make the playoffs. This is skill what the 49ers are doing to build this roster. It's not a fluke that they're able to continuously in every single draft find guys that could either start right away or within 2-3 years are one of the best at their position. That's not luck. And so to me, that's a skill that's being underappreciated for the 49ers that keeps their window continuing to grow, right? We thought Jimmy Ward and losing Jimmy Ward, losing Jaquiski Tartt was going to be, how are we going to replace these guys? We brought in Hufanga, and based off of what we're hearing about the new kid that got drafted, it's like we got the guys for the next decade. You know, Fred Warner, you got Dre Green. You know, it's like I just think that they're, because of their ability to, one, pick the right coaches, develop the right coaching staff, draft the right people, and develop those guys, – they will always have a window that's big enough but they need to get the quarterback spot right. That's what I'm saying. Like,
No, they definitely do. I guess my point is that if Trey Lance or Brock Purdy are not the guy, then that means, because if Trey Lance isn't the guy, it's like, okay, then you can just forward it and say, well, you spent all those picks on Brock Purdy, essentially. Same difference.
right.
You're good to go. But if neither are the guy, then all of a sudden the quarterback room likely isn't inexpensive. Like, you're going to have to go spend some money on a guy like Kirk Cousins, which means now you're starting to strip away some of the talent in the other places. And eventually, not having major assets for 3+ years is going to come back and bite you. Like, it just is. You can't go without first round picks for 3 years in a row, roughly. And then also without, second round pick because of the CMC trade, and continue to replenish the cabinet. Like, it just doesn't work that way. You can't always hit late. It's just not the way that
But
it
they already
works.
made it. They already made it through that though. They already were able to create a better roster. They picked Hufanga, who should have been a first round pick.
They made it through, right. But they made it through if one of these guys hits, because again, if let's say Purdy and Lance aren't the guy, then you didn't make it through, because now you've lost the quarterback. None of the guys were the quarterback. Now you're spending $30 million on a Kirk Cousins, let's say. And so now you've got to start stripping away the talent, which means you didn't necessarily make it through, because that talent is stripped.
But what I'm saying is, because they have the talent to replenish that talent, they haven't gone through a draft without hitting majorly in positions of need that they needed to hit at. Right. So what I'm saying is,
you have to, let's say, I'll just give you an example. Let me try to make my point a little bit more clear. Let's say you have to go get a Kirk Cousins. When I say strip away that talent, let's assume that they have to get rid of Debo next year in order to make that work, or Eric Armstead next year in order to make that work.
Sure.
Who on this team do they have that they've drafted over the last couple of years that is the replacement to a guy like that? Where's
Kalia
that guy
Davis? So Kalia Davis might come in, and we don't know, like I said, but Kalia Davis, from all indications of who he can be as a player, is already built to be the replacement to Armstead, right? They already have Hargrave, so they don't actually need to replace Armstead. Hargrave's already doing that. They need to replace that other interior guy which was Kinlaw or DJ or all those guys, right? So what I'm saying is, like, I think because of the ability of Adam Peters, because of the ability of this scouting room and this coaching staff and their ability to develop people, it's not as bleak as people think. Like, everybody wants to talk about this window's already always going to be shut. I think teams like the 49ers, the Eagles, the Chiefs, they have abilities to, like, keep that window open because of their ability to do things with the roster, draft, develop. And I think people just underappreciate that. It's just because it happens for so many other teams, Jesse. It's that whole a window shuts. But the window hasn't shut for the Eagles, and they've changed quarterbacks, they've changed coaches, they've done all that kind of stuff, and they still have the window because they're able to draft, develop, and all that kind of stuff. The 49ers have that same ability. I don't think this window shuts just because they make a few mistakes here and there with personnel.
I don't know, man. Trent Williams retires. I think, and you don't have the quarterback. I think it's over. It's a guillotine, because they don't even have a good necessarily right tackle right now. So now you're trying to replace both tackles on the fly.
I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised with Colton McKivitz from things that I've heard from people that aren't in the media that practice with him and have seen him live.
All right, fair enough.
Doom and gloom with Jesse. Jesse, this is why you bring me on. It's all doom and gloom. Like, it's all guillotine. Their heads are about to be chopped off. We're about to be done. Yada yada. Yeah, and guys, we've heard this from Jesse year after year after year after year, and it's just been closer, that much closer, that much closer. Like I said, it's all that. Oh, they don't win a Super Bowl. It's been a complete bust. If that's the way you think, cool.
But I didn't say that. See, now you're putting words in my mouth. I actually gave more ways that the season could be a success than you did. Liar, you're a liar.
It's the aura you give up. It's the aura you give out. Right. The doom and gloom.
Tyler says, so I have a question for you both. Then in response to that scenario, what is ideal for this team with the way that our roster is constructed. I don't even remember your last question, Tyler, to be honest with you. We went off on like a 10-minute tangent, and I don't even know what the last question was. Hold on. Let me go find it. I'll find it. Figure this out. Try to put the pieces together. Do you remember what the last question was?
To that scenario, what is the ideal for this team with the way our roster
He said, Jesse, it's going to be a failure because we are very top heavy. Okay, so he was talking about the roster being top heavy. I mean, best case scenario is that they win a Super Bowl, but second best case scenario is that they found their quarterback. I think, I mean, are you looking for a specific quarterback? Maybe which one fits the roster better? I don't know.
I think we know what their first round pick is going to be next year. It's going to be the best left tackle that they could get.
It's got to be a tackle.
So we know that that's there because if they win a Super Bowl, for sure, Trent is gone. If they don't win a Super Bowl, he still has some years on his contract. Yeah. He stated, and especially if they have the quarterback now, he might come back just to, leave on a high note because he's extremely competitive and I don't think he wants to end his career without a Super Bowl. So, yeah, I mean, I think they have to, with their first round pick, get the left tackle that's going to replace Trent. If it's not next year, the year after, because I don't think you have Trent for more than this season and next season. So,
yeah, definitely. I mean, and then obviously one of these quarterbacks panning out is best case scenario because
for sure.
Here's what's interesting. A lot of people talk about Brock Purdy and say, well, even if let's say him and Jimmy are even, which that would be worst case scenarios that Brock Purdy never improves. I don't see that happening, but a lot of people will bring that up. They'll say, well, let's say they are even. Brock Purdy's a lot cheaper than Jimmy Garoppolo. The problem with that argument is that now everybody that was cheaper when Jimmy was here to offset that contract is now more expensive. So really, you can't have the same level of quarterback play and win a Super Bowl because I don't think the team around it has improved enough to offset that. So we need a quarterback to step up, regardless of who it is. And so that's what you have to have happen. And so the ideal situation is for one of these guys to step up and show that they are the guy long term. They're still going to be cheap for another year or two, and then you can worry about paying them and figuring it out from there. But hopefully by then you've won a Super Bowl. That would be the ideal situation, in my opinion. Let's see. Vincent comes in from Sunil's burner account and says, Jesse, Grant is rubbing off on you with the negativity. No, man, I think Sunil will tell you. I mean, we've been doing this show for a good year and a half. We definitely are a yin and yang to each other. He is the overly positive. I'm a lot more pessimistic, and that's just the way the show works for us. So I don't know.
They call hey, Vincent, Grant and Jesse call it real. They're just realistic, and I'm optimistic. But the name is so real, Sunil. I keep it real, baby.
No, I don't. I think this is what's great about sports to me is that there's so many different ways to go about fandom, and there's so many different ways to look at the way a game flows or what happens. I mean, you could set 10 people in a room, watch the same play, and you could have 10 different opinions on how that play developed, what happened with it. And that's what makes it great. There is no right answers. Like eventually someone will get proven right. Don't get me wrong. But in that moment, usually it comes down to an opinion and there is no right answers. And so for me, until the team wins, like I'm going to look for reasons to get better so that they do win. And not everybody's like that. So, it's just the way it is. I know it's coming from love.
Look at the little shots. He's saying that I don't look for ways that this team could get better. Look, this is what Jesse does, man. He loses an argument. He tries to take it personal with still being a nice guy, trying to get those shots in. But Vincent, see through the game, brother. See through the game.
I'm good. I got a good jab. I'm telling you. I got you got to look out for it, man. Here it comes. I'm going to throw that jab. You never know when it's coming.
I see you, brother. Hey, brother Bob, I see you. You said I'm a homer. I get it. I understand, man. It's your opinion, man. I have my opinion. You have your opinion. It's all love, man. Thank you so much for tuning in.
This is what's good, right? Because he says you're a homer, but then Vincent's like, hey, I like this guy in your show. So Anyway, we got someone in here for everybody. It sounds like we do. Now I just got to go find the Purdy honk and make everybody happy.
Lobs is in
Mike
here.
says, any word on Joey Fisher? Is he really a hidden gem? Well, I mean, Coach is in the chat. I know that he knows a lot about him. I think he would think that he could potentially be a hidden gem. It's just really hard. I mean, when you're pushed so far down the depth chart, it's just hard to make a team. It's hard to make a team year in and year out. And in order to be developed into a gem, you're going to have to clear waivers. You're going to have to ride the bench. You're going to have to develop. And you just never know how a career is going to go. So I think he could be a hidden gem for sure. I think anytime that you either go really late in the draft or you're undrafted and you find a way on a team and you have some talent, you can be a hidden gem. So I think he definitely fits that mold. I don't know if he will be a hidden gem. That's a whole different question for sure. So
it's not looking like he's going to make the roster as of now. But hey, training camp hasn't even started, but we shall see.
Right. And he may not, but he could still sneak through the cracks as far as, making it through waivers and ending up on the
Cole
team somewhere or another.
McKivitz was that guy. He didn't make the roster initially, and now he's starting at right tackle. They do need a look after McKivitz. It drops big time. We don't have that.
We don't have that swing tackle anymore. Like we've had.
Yeah. So that Brunskill position is definitely one that somebody needs to step up and fill. It might not even be a guy that's on the roster right now. Somebody was asking why they haven't signed a D lineman. I think because maybe that money goes towards a tackle if any of these backups don't step up, because I don't think they believe that Jalen's the dude.
Yeah, I mean, well, I thought they brought him in to play guard. And that's what they said, and they keep playing him at tackle. So I don't know what the plan was there, but I will say I'm very comfortable with the interior offensive line because
and the depth.
Yeah, the depth. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. The depth, because you got Feliciano first off. He can play guard, center. Comfortable with that. So
Jason Poe is there. So they have the depth of the interior. Yeah, Ezekiel. Yeah. They don't have anybody that's really stepped up at tackle, including Fisher, unfortunately, even though they paid him because they expected him to be that guy. Yeah. So
but it's still very early for Fisher. We haven't even gone through a training camp. So I'm not going to write. I mean, we've seen people write off players, offensive linemen in particular, and it didn't work out so well. Banks turned out to be pretty damn good. So I'll throw that out there. But yeah, here, Coach will answer your question. He knows a lot about him. So read his comment, go back and forth with him. He's definitely your guy when it comes to Mr. Fisher. Let's get into this last topic, though. And that is the name of the show, the title of the show, ending the argument about Brock Purdy for 49er fans. And what I'm starting to realize more and more is that people are coming at the Purdy argument from different spots, different foundations. And that's where the hang up is happening. And so I think wording is very important when you're talking about Brock Purdy and what he is or isn't or what he could be. And I think if you're coming at it from the foundation of Brock Purdy was a rookie, he was the last pick in the draft, he definitely played better than anybody expected. I know, Larry saw him in training camp and liked him, and other people saw him and liked him. I liked him in 2020 in college, but even if you were a Purdy guy, nobody expected that. I'm sorry. If somebody actually expected those things, as good as he played right away, then that dude's Nostradamus. Expecting him to play good is one thing. Expecting him to have the mental is another. But to outplay Jimmy Garoppolo immediately, I don't know. Maybe a couple of those guys exist, but I haven't seen it. What I'm saying is Brock Purdy completely outplayed his rookie deal already. He overshot expectations. So if you're coming at it from that standpoint with Brock Purdy and saying, hey, played really good as a rookie. I made this little chart here. I'll share this. Played really good as a rookie. If this is the conversation, Brock played great as a rookie, and I'm excited for his future. I think the automatic response is we all agree, end of conversation. What happens, though, is that's not the way the conversation goes. People have got to double down and take it a step further. And a lot of it, I think, is to potentially downplay Lance. There's a lot of people that don't like Lance. And so they've got to they've got to double down. They got to take it a step further and say, well, Lance isn't the guy, so Purdy must be the guy. And now what you've got happening is, hey, we scored 33 points a game. Brock's our future. And now the conversation is going a million different directions. I'm not going to read all these. It was more made for fun. It was like a joking thing that I made. And it all leads to Trey being a bust. So I think the best way to have the conversation about Purdy is this first way. We don't know exactly what he is. We don't know what he's going to be. Let's just say that he played great for a rookie and we're excited about his future. Because I think everybody should be able to get on board with that. Can we at least agree there? I think if we can at least agree there, then we can stop saying that, oh, people don't like Purdy or they hate Purdy. Because what's going to happen is if you start to say things like, oh, he's our franchise guy, he played like a top 5 quarterback, I think he can be elite, you're going to start to get pushback. Deservedly so. That's where the pushback happens. And then that pushback turns into this back and forth. Somebody's labeled a hater of Trey. Somebody's labeled a hater of Purdy. And then there's just no agreement. If we all just have this jumping off point with the conversation, we're good to go. What do you think, Sunil?
I agree. And I also think that I understand why you don't spend any more time on Twitter. Because you got way too much time on your hands doing all this kind of stuff.
I made this in like 10 minutes. It was fantastic. It is actual.
It's great.
This is art.
I think especially guys like you, Jesse, it gets misconstrued. And I'll throw you some bail. Like, you just really believe in Trey Lance. And I think sometimes your passion for Trey Lance, because you've been on Trey Lance even before like he was even a 49er. You just loved what he brought to the table, and you felt like he could be a game changer for not just the 49ers, but anybody who ends up drafting him. And I think your beef or your sentiment and your passion comes from that you don't feel like he's gotten the opportunity to really show what he's capable of. And unfortunately, right now, the person that's in his way to be able to show that full potential is Brock Purdy. So I don't think you're necessarily downplaying Brock Purdy. It's just you really, really want to see Trey Lance get that opportunity to kind of see if even your assessment of him is true or not, because you can't know either way. But as a 49er fan, it's a really good problem to have that you have a guy in Brock Purdy who's shown the ability to take this team on an 8-game winning streak, win 2 playoff games, and, really, really look like at the end of the season, look, the Eagles didn't look as good as the 49ers looked at the end of the season. So to me, I think that we all need to understand that we're 49er fans first. Brock Purdy is QB1. It has nothing to do with us. It has to do with Kyle Shanahan and
right.
The front office and all that kind of stuff. I want to see Brock Purdy do well, because if Brock Purdy's doing well, that means the 49ers are doing well. If Brock Purdy wasn't there, we absolutely believe that Trey Lance could be the guy and potentially will still be the guy. We don't know how things work out, but ultimately I think this slide is absolutely accurate. We all need to just agree and be happy that the 49ers at least have somebody that they're excited about and possibly 2 guys that they're excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously if you have 2 guys potentially that could be the guy, then you're upping your chances that somebody is the guy. Because, and this is something that I said going into the 2021 draft, and I remember being on Grant's show, and we were ranking the quarterbacks and talking about how this could be a generational draft from a quarterback talent standpoint. There's 4, maybe 5 guys, what have you. And I remember the comment that I made. I said, statistically speaking, there's only going to be 1 guy that comes out of this actually being the guy. This is the way that drafts go. Now, we don't know who that's going to be. Most likely it's going to be Lawrence, just based off of what we've seen. But if there's only 1 guy, it's probably going to be him, and then everybody else might not live up to expectation. And maybe that's the case so far. I'm not willing to throw in the towel on any of these guys because none of them have even made it to year 3. So I don't know exactly what any of them are, but just statistically speaking, when you go through the course of drafts in the NFL, that's usually what happens. Again, this year, there's 3 guys that came out of here that a lot of people are high on, in this year's draft. But statistically speaking, only one's going to pan out, if any. So it's just the way that it works. So going back to the 49ers, having two guys now, chances are you don't have the franchise guy on this roster, but you're upping your chances by having two guys that you believe in. Or I guess the 49ers would say three in Sam Darnold, right? So you're upping your chances.
Think about Sam Darnold's year. There was like 4 or 5 quarterbacks that year that everybody thought were can't miss type of quarterbacks. And I don't think any of them panned out. I mean, Baker, maybe, if you consider him panning out.
No. Baker didn't. Allen and Lamar were in that year as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so 2 of them. But I remember Josh Rosen
didn't. Baker didn't.
Yeah, and Darnold, right?
Didn't, obviously, at least not yet. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's it. And also, I think, again, people want to hear what they want to hear. And so, like, I get the comment a lot. Somebody was in the comment section earlier on one of my videos. They're like, I've never heard Jesse say anything constructive towards Trey Lance. And I'm like, well, you just haven't listened. Because I've said many times that if you're just looking at who played better, there's no argument. Like, anybody that would argue that Trey Lance played better than Brock Purdy with the small opportunity they've both had, they're just not telling you the truth, right? So we know that Brock Purdy played better. Now, that, to me, that's not saying that he is better. It just means right now he is, and he played better. But that doesn't forecast long-term for me. And are there things that Trey Lance needs to work on? Absolutely. He needs to be a quicker decision maker. I know that he sees it. I know he goes through his reads, but he has to trust himself. He has to trust that what he's seeing is there and just let it rip. And then he has to get more accurate. Like, there are things that he needs to improve on, no doubt about it. If there wasn't, and this was the finished product, then there would be no way to continue to be on that Trey Lance train per se, because this would be it for him. He couldn't get any better. So, of course, there are areas of opportunity for him. And I think both can be true. Again, I've got receipts dating back to 2020 that says I like Brock Purdy a couple of years ago. But if the 49ers are going to have both guys on the roster and I have to choose who I would ride with to figure this thing out, I'm choosing Trey Lance. Doesn't mean I don't like Brock Purdy. Just like for those of you that like Brock Purdy, doesn't mean you hate Trey Lance. Now, there definitely is a group that does hate, and I think hatred shows through when the conversations turn and we veer away from Brock Purdy played great as a rookie, I'm excited for his future, and we start making definite comments about what he is or what he's not. That's where the argument happens, and then people are going to like, how do I one up what you're saying? Oh, you're talking bad about Trey? Well, Trey's my guy, so now I'm going to throw something at Purdy. You know what I mean? And so that's what ends up happening in these conversations. And ultimately, I think if you were really just to pin everybody down and have a conversation, I would say 90% of people probably support both Trey and Brock. I could be wrong on that. I know it doesn't feel that way, but if you were to get some truth serum in everybody, I think that's most likely what you would hear. Brother Bob says, I'm a fan from Walsh, Montana, and Eddie D days. It's Super Bowl win or bust. Getting close is for the Bill. Just taking stray shots is for the Bills and the Vikings fans. Being competitive, but losing is still losing. I do so many of these shows. I forget who I have these conversations with.
So he was saying this comment to me.
For sure.
Because he like went, but like I said, I think that's great. You know what I mean? Like, but if you look at modern NFL history, that combination has happened maybe 3 times, and we might be in the 4th right now with the Kansas City Chiefs. But outside of the 49ers, New England Patriots, and maybe Dallas Cowboys back in the day, and possibly the Chiefs now, it's very, very hard to have that type of success. I think that we are actually building a team with the right coach, with the right coaching staff, with the right owner, with all of that stuff to actually get back into a position where we have the same type of success as Walsh, Montana, and Eddie D. in the way that the league is right now. Back then, there was no salary cap. Back then, there was things that you could do that you can't do right now. So it's a different equation that needs to be perfected to go back to that level of success. I believe, based off of the tangential parts that we can say, hey, this is where we're really good at. We're building towards that to be a dominant team, not just for a one and done like the Rams just did, but to continuously win championship after championship, like the Kansas City Chiefs are doing, like the New England Patriots have done in the past when they had Brady, like the Walsh, Montana, Eddie D 49ers. And I'm saying, yeah, we're not there yet, but that equation is being perfected, and we're just one variable away, which we believe is the starting caliber quarterback, to win multiple Super Bowls. And at that point, you know, we're gonna revel in it, right? But we have to go through the work right now, which is what I think we're doing.
One thing that came away from my call-in show last week was there's clearly two different eras in this fan base. And there's a group of us, and Sunil, you would fit into this as well, that remembers being 5-0. Mm-hmm. Like that was a pride thing. Being able to tell people we're 5-0 in the Super Bowl. When we get there, hey, we may not get there every year, but when we get there, we cash in. And then all of a sudden that 5-0 went away. And then now it's 5-2. And so it's like every time the 49ers lose in these big games, like, whoa, we're used to winning when we get in these situations. What's going on? And so I think it's a bit of a shell shock, but I also think for some of us, it's been a really, really long time. And for others, you've never seen any Super Bowl victory. And so I think there's a lot of impatience with this fan base. Perceived impatience, I think that it's warranted because it's been way too long. It's time to win a Super Bowl. So
I agree.
Tyler says, so for the Purdy guys, I have a serious question. What is going on? We got a lizard on your fan?
I have no idea. Something just broke off. Dude, I don't know what's going on, bro. There's some bad. It's that bad juju you sending my way, man.
Oh, it's my fault now. Okay.
Yeah,
you notice I always picked a lizard on the fan because I've seen that in Florida. That's a Florida thing. Tyler says, so for the Purdy guys, I have a serious question for you. What are you going to do if Purdy starts facing adversity and loses a few games? They're going to do exactly what I've been doing, and they're going to say, well, I mean, it's still early. It's, you know, he's young. We haven't seen it all. Like, let him get through it. Like, he's going to play bad at some point. He's going to lose a game or two at some point. Like, that's just the way that the NFL works. And when he does, they're not going to backpedal off their take, nor should they. They're just going to say, hey, it happens with everybody. It's still early. You got to give him his years. That's what's going to happen. John B says, I need another call-in show so I can vent. John, I wish I could give it to you, but pause, big pause again. That being said, I wish I could give another call-in show to you is what I should have said. But unfortunately, I can't do that this week. I'm going to Costa Rica on Thursday, and I'm going to be there for about 10 days. So I'm going to be out of commission for call-in shows. I will have some content, some pre-made content that I'm pumping out while I'm gone. But as far as live shows and call-in shows, not going to happen, unfortunately, for a couple weeks. Brother Bob says, Sunil, you trust Kyle to find the next franchise quarterback? Yes, Sunil, do you trust Kyle to find the next franchise quarterback?
No.
No.
I don't think he'll find the franchise quarterback. I think, like, as far as from the draft, because I don't think they're going to have a high enough pick anymore. I think it's got to be imported. If it's not one of these guys, it could very well be one of these guys. But if it's not them, it's going to have to be like a Kirk Cousins or somebody come in and be a stopgap.
They're saying, Sunil, give us a call-in show. There you go. Go to Sunil's channel, subscribe there, and he'll give you the call-in show. That's what I heard. That's word on the street. Quadruple pause. I know I can't, dude. I know right now I'm on the East Coast. It's 11 o'clock, man. I wish I could, but I can't. Okay,
Hey, and I turned Brother Bob. Sunil is not a homer. See? I just see things the way that I see things. I'm not
No,
over
he
here.
he gave you a compliment earlier before the super chats, just to be fair.
Okay.
What will Lance fans do if he's Dookie? Same question. Move on. I don't know. It's pretty,
Kirk Cousins, baby.
at least we'll know. Like, we just want to know is really what it comes down to. Is he or is he not? You know what I mean?
And the only way that we find out Lance is quote unquote Dookie is because Brock Purdy either got injured or he's bad too. So it's like worst case scenario. Because Purdy obviously is going to start as long as he's healthy. If Lance gets in there and plays bad as well, it's because Purdy got injured and or he's playing really, really bad. So ultimately, if Lance is bad, Kirk Cousins is going to be our quarterback next season.
Yeah, because you're right. Because that means that Purdy probably wasn't the guy either. Yeah, it's a fair point by you. It's this whole thing's interesting because, and I've said this before, and I don't know who falls into the category. I'm not pulling receipts. I don't have the time to do that. You can find all the receipts on me. My takes are all over the place, but I can't remember who's what. But there is a big group that thought that Trey Lance wasn't the guy, and then victory lapped after they thought Jimmy was the guy. Now that they think Purdy's the guy, when actually they were wrong first about Jimmy Garoppolo, regardless. So, if anything, we're all 1-1 if that's the case, because you were likely a Jimmy guy before you were a Purdy guy, and you ended up being right on one, but you were definitely wrong on Jimmy. So I don't know. We're all wrong at some point, I guess, is the way that it goes. It's happening. We're talking it into existence, Kirk Cousins.
It's only happening if we're wrong about Purdy and Lance, and I don't think we're wrong about Purdy or Lance.
Yeah. I think one of them hopefully is going to be the guy, and we'll see who it is. But as long as it's one of them and we're hoisting number 6, like we've talked about all show, that's the most important thing. So that being said, we put in an hour 46 for you. Appreciate each and every one of you for tapping in. Make sure you stay tuned here at Last Second Sports. Like I said, the channel's going to be dormant here for the better part of 10 days because I'll be on vacation. But I've quit Twitter because I'm doubling down on YouTube. I've got tons of great guests that are going to be weekly guests this upcoming season. I've got Sunil, who's always here. You've got Ryan Hensley's going to be a weekly guest. Vish is going to be a weekly guest. You've got David Lichty, who's going to be a weekly guest. And then I'm going to have Behind Enemy Lines. So this season is going to be full of content for y'all. So make sure you stick around. Appreciate all the support. Much love. Peace.